Reporter Mona Rabiee of VOA's Persian News Network has covered this story and talked about it with On Assignment's Philip Alexio. Mona's story starts with a look at an older home buyer from Afghanistan.
Nabi Sahak bought this house in Virginia in 2010 for his mother Khadija, a practicing Muslim from Afghanistan. He always wanted to buy a home for his parents, but avoided the purchase for many years. That's because paying interest on money, as in a conventional mortgage loan, is not allowed in strict Islamic practice.
Everybody in our family was, in one way or another, against the idea of conventional mortgages.
How did you find this family?
Well, when I decided to do the piece, I reached out to a few of the larger, more well-known Islamic banking companies in the U.S. And there was one based in Michigan that services even Muslim Americans, Muslim Canadians in Canada, and they referred me to a nearby family in Virginia.
How did they end up finding this sort of Sharia-compliant loan?
Well, their story is really interesting because they're Afghanis, and they came to the U.S. in 2002 after spending some time, they said, in Afghan refugee camps in Pakistan after leaving Afghanistan. And they had actually, the young son, for his wife and his child, had already bought a home using conventional mortgages here in the States for themselves. But when it came time for him and his brother to buy a home for mom and dad, that older generation insisted on living in a house that was sort of interest-free. And that's when the son, Nabi, went researching to see if that option was even available to him in the U.S.
Now, there are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. There's a big market to tap into. Companies like Guidance, are they expanding? Is the demand growing?
Guidance Residential tells me that they've had almost 5% increases in business over the last 3 years.
For the majority, it's a relief to know that this actually does exist. We are, in a sense, impacting the home ownership rates of Muslim Americans in a positive way.
Alhamdulillah, how are you doing?
Including even through the recession of the last few years and the mortgage crisis, they say, didn't really affect them. They feel like they're really tapping into an untapped niche market and there's room for growth. But I don't think the industry has really taken hold in the US the way Sharia-compliant mortgages have taken hold in countries like the UK. And they tell me sort of anecdotally, and that's just sort of the market is larger. The Muslims who have come to the UK tend to be a little bit more traditional or closer tied to their culture than, let's say, the Muslim Americans who have merged in and blended with the larger culture a bit better and don't insist on having Sharia-compliant mortgages.
It's that the bank and the buyer purchase it together?
The buyer chooses the house, the Islamic bank buys that house, then immediately sells it to the buyer at a markup. Then you, the buyer, would make installment plans, but they don't call that interest because it's a transaction of an actual commodity. It's not interest on money. And that's what's sort of forbidden in Islamic tenets against this sort of stuff. Another option quickly would be the bank buys the home, then rents it to you, the buyer, in a rent-to-own type agreement. And the third most popular model, they tell me, in the US is a partnership agreement where both the bank and the buyer become co-owners of that house, and then you, the buyer, sort of buy my share of the house back over a certain amount of time.
We are very comfortable here. We are at peace. Everywhere we go, we tell people we got an Islamic loan and are very happy.
So who determines if these loans are Sharia compliant?
Every company sort of goes to the customer and says, here are the actual Muslim scholars that we've gone to put their stamp of approval on our products. Guidance told me that they spent several years and probably $2, even maybe $3 million, a really huge number, researching and then paying for the consultation involved to set up those financial transaction contracts when they were first setting up 10 years ago.
Do they get advantages, tax write-off advantages built in?
They do, but apparently they didn't always. Guidance sets up an LLC, a limited liability company. That's too technical, I'm supposed to get into. But that sort of protects the home buyer from certain taxes, some sort of a homestead tax or a business tax. Others tell me that anecdotally again, and I didn't confirm the details of this, several years ago, and so relatively recently, some federal and state laws came into place allowing buyers of this kind of a financial transaction to take advantage of the tax write-offs. Okay. But they seem to be more limited to the sort of blanket tax write-off that you and I might enjoy in a conventional loan.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Mona Rabiee. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.